Hello and welcome to our second episode of Be Your Best. I'm one of the co-hosts, Antoinette, and I'm excited about today's show. We're going to be smashing all the myths about fats. So first, let me introduce my co-host, Alan, and we have a full house today too.
Yes, it's pretty exciting. We do have a full house today, and yeah, this whole thing about fats and fat is bad, and you know, it's like I said last week. You're an encyclopedia on it. One of our guests is, actually both of our guests are very knowledgeable about the subject, and I'm a 2-page paperback. So this is all new to me, and having my eyes opened about the whole fat thing just 2 weeks ago, and then living it and seeing it actually being baloney is amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, today is about fats. But let's introduce the other people. Annette? Anita. We have an Annette in here and an Anita. Okay.
And Antoinette.
Antoinette. Oh, yeah. Okay,
really
so
confused with the A's now.
yeah,
It's
Yeah.
about fat, not memories. Here.
we'll do
That
memories
will
some
help
other
the
day. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
I am Anita with Natural Wellness by Anita. I'm a holistic health practitioner and wellness coach, and I love fats. I think they're great, and everybody should be eating them. I have a degree in holistic nutrition, so I know a little bit about it, and I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, this will be fun. And none other than Mike Feldbauer.
Hello, everybody. Mike Feldbauer. You know me for many things. One is Alan's partner in this Flagler Boys podcast studio, the Flagler County Drug Court Foundation and stuff. But on today's topic, I've been involved with this for my own personal use and need for the last almost 2.5, 3 years, in trying to find the right way to eat healthy, to get my diet right. And I'm a type 2 diabetic, to get all that dropped down towards normal.
You have a level of normal?
I think between the two of us, it will be very hard to distinguish that. I don't deal with that at all.
Yeah, it'll be tough. So, on the subject of fats,
Okay, so can I kick this off?
kick it off.
Okay, so I think where the whole thing where people started feeling that fats are bad, it all stemmed from this study that was done like in the, I want to say like the 70s or something. It was by this guy, Ansel Keys, and he did this big study. It was called like the five.
I
I
know exactly what you're
the
talking
five
about.
country study or continent study, and it was basically all these different countries, and it was so cherry picked and flawed, it's not even funny. So for example, there were countries like Germany and France that ate high fat diets, and they have no, they don't have any of these heart disease or any of these problems, so they were excluded because of that. Like just commonsensical things just made no sense. And then they had all these participants, and then yet only like 3.9% of the data was used from so they cherry picked which ones they want to use. In places like Crete, they decided to do it during Lent, which they abstained from like meats and fats, and then went, oh, this is their diet. It was it was so flawed, it was disgusting. So they've since recanted this so many times, but when that study came out, it was just like the Bible, hence came the food pyramid, and it just was fat became demonized, carbs were good, and then that basically started, the whole thing. And if any doctor even came out with anything, whether it was a scientific paper that said anything contradictory to this study, they were like run out of the business. It was crazy.
Yeah, he was backed by the government. He got his foothold into the government. And there were doctors back when this study came out that said this isn't making any sense. And it wasn't found out for years later that it was actually not a true study, that it was cherry picked. It didn't meet all the requirements for, what it was saying.
So was this thing peer reviewed?
It was just
It was a mess.
It was just
a mess.
a paper?
The family found
And it was
the notes that came out.
Yeah,
after.
and it was observational. That's like me going so for example,
observation.
They didn't even have factors equivalent. Like in most studies, if you want to study, let's say, a high fat diet versus low carb, you're going to keep everything else consistent and only vary that. No, nothing else was accounted for. It was just basically, do you remember what you ate last? I mean, it was crazy.
It's the precursor to where we are now in our health in our nation.
Well, yeah, it kicked off the change of diet and everything that we all thought was the right path in the beginning. I thought was the right path until 14 days ago, 15, 16, somewhere around that, not too long ago. But interestingly, I have, as I post online, that I've switched my diet from lots of sugar and stuff in it, which, because, people say sugar's in everything. Sugar's not in everything.
No.
You can find you can find an entire meal plan for months eating different things with zero sugar in it. So I have had zero glucose, zero sugar, zero saccharin, zero monostupidiso.
There's a lot of names for it. Names.
Yeah.
Since I started this, and switched over to a high-fat, medium-protein, low-carb diet. And it's made a world of difference. This whole, I mean, if I can see it in that short of a time that the whole thing was baloney, I don't know why our so-called medical profession can't see it or refuses to see
Well, it went
it.
beyond the medical profession. Once that took hold, then there was a lot of money to be made
Yeah.
on the other side. Okay? Don't use don't use butter, use margarine. Use all these corn oils and all this other stuff that they just built on. So keep you away from the stuff that we now know is really the healthy ones, and go look at the shelves in stores.
Yeah.
My mom, I can say it because she can't hit me anymore. She passed away a while ago. Was huge on margarine and Crisco.
Yeah.
So I kind of grew up on that stuff. Well, I never actually grew up. I got older eating that stuff. But now it's like I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It's
Crisco should
the
have been
worst.
banned because it's a trans fat, and
Yeah.
those were banned, but somehow they manipulated because it's still on the shelves. I still see it
it's
in the
there.
store, but those trans fats were supposed to be done for, and in our food anymore. And then to back like Ansel Keys, studies that happened since then in current 40 years ago, 50 years, any study, anything that like kind of argued that what his stood for, were buried. They were buried or not put out prominently. Like I found the study last night, researching for this, was 40 years old. That was saturated fats versus unsaturated fats, and the unsaturated fats being like your vegetable oils and stuff. And it showed that the vegetable oils, the people in the study that had the vegetable oils, had double the risk of having a heart attack versus the ones with the saturated fat that they all say is bad for us.
Yeah. And that study
Wow.
you're talking about, that was actually a study where everything was kept controlled. They were actually
Done properly.
it was almost like institutionalized people. So it was people that were in hospitals. So it wasn't where they were going home and saying they were eating this.
Right,
It was completely like every factor was taken care of. So I mean, it was ridiculous. But I think just to kind of let's just give some people a little bit of knowledge. So when you're eating, you're either like your body basically runs on different types of fuel. You're either a fat burner or a sugar burner.
Right.
So I think what scares people when you're looking at it like fat is 7 calories per gram, where carbs or sugars are 4 calories per gram. So people in their heads too, they go, oh my God, it's almost double the amount of calories. But it's not really a calories in versus calories out model, because calories count to a certain extent, but not to the extent that people think they do.
Well, if you're eating healthy food with healthy calories attached to it, it's far better than eating junk with lower calories attached to it.
Yeah. And not only that, but depending, like, I think most people can say, like, if you're having a carb, a Twinkie, which is probably, God knows how many, you can't argue that that's going to be the equivalent of eating, let's say, a green salad. So carbs are different. So I know we were talking a little bit about fats and different stuff. So, first we're saying don't be scared of fat, and then people were talking about bad fats. So let's kind of clarify what's good and bad, and not just, throw out all these things without people understanding. So first of all, a lot of people, I was researching, I was listening to a podcast, and they were demonizing saturated fat. Like, oh, those are the bad fats. No, they're not. The things that are bad are the vegetable oils, the seed oil, stuff like that. Canola. Things that are healthy fats are going to be things like your animal fats. So it's going to be like butter and ghee, lard, tallow, which is beef fat, if you don't know what that is. But those are your animal fats. Those are highly saturated, all very healthy. Other things like avocado oil are very healthy. Olive oil is healthy. But when you start going into some of these other ones, again, just like if you go high fat, but if you're not eating healthy fats and go towards margarines and all this other stuff, you're not going to have the same health benefits of having truly healthy fats.
Right. And that's one of the things I discovered as well is, I was eating, well, I thought I was eating healthy, and we were eating not the Crisco oil and that kind of stuff, but it was still seed oils that we were eating, and never actually looked into it. I just believed the nonsense that was said, and but now, since I'm a two-page paperback, reading that, seeing that, and now living the difference between the two, it's night and day. And like I said, it's got to be money driven, because there's no way that an intelligent medical staff, doctors, whatever, could not see, especially today, that the whole thing is BS.
Well, even like way back when, there was all these studies demonizing eggs, which is like
that goes back and forth all the time.
Yeah, which is one of the most nutrient dense foods you could possibly eat is an egg. And that study was funded by the cereal companies, because if you're not going to have eggs for breakfast, most people turn to cereals.
Right.
So you got to look at who's funding these studies. I mean, that's an excellent point to bring up.
There's a whole Kellogg story.
Yeah.
And I think the other point that Antoinette brought up and Anita brought up is, and what you're guiding people on, fat is not fat. Okay?
Yeah.
You've got to determine the good and the bad.
Yeah.
So the studies, fat. That's it. So when you look at stuff like that, you start judging it incorrectly.
Yeah.
And say, well, it's fat's no good. But no.
Fat's needed in the body. Different parts of our body need to have fat. Our brain is 60% fat. It needs to have some more put into it, because it also will get dried up and shriveled and everything. We need fat.
Prune brain.
Huh?
Prune brain.
Prune brain. Yeah. We need, it helps our gut. Different fats help our gut, to heal our gut, especially if you have gut issues. And it's also in our cells. 50% of the cell membrane is fat. So fat is used in a lot of ways in our body. And the fact that we tried to cut it out and not get it is just, I mean, we just have so many unhealthy people now. I think it's so obvious. But
yeah.
Well, and you can look around at old pictures, like take a look at a picture from the 50s or 60s or 70s, of the people walking around on a beach. And you're not going to see
obese people like you do today.
Yeah, today, you're lucky to see a thin, healthy person versus just everybody's obese.
Yeah.
And it's all diet.
Well, and back then, tallow and lard were used a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I think the other thing is, in people's minds, they go, if I eat fat, I'll get fat.
Right.
Or if I eat cholesterol, then I'll have high cholesterol. So if you eat spinach, are you going to turn into a spinach? Like, it just makes no sense. Yeah. Like, there's a whole process that the body uses. Like, for one, the body makes cholesterol. The body makes, 300 whatever milligrams of cholesterol. So if you eat 50 or lower to 10, does that make it? Then your body will just make more. It's irrelevant. Like eating cholesterol doesn't give you high cholesterol.
Yeah,
I mean,
it doesn't.
it's
It
just
doesn't.
crazy.
And it's been proven, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
Because our body does make it. It's a necessary thing in our body is cholesterol. So, when somebody takes a statin and tries to block the cholesterol and lower the cholesterol, there's more people, and I can go look up these studies because I've seen them before. So I will get them for you for later. There are studies that have shown that people with lower cholesterol die more frequently than somebody who has high cholesterol. And I'm not talking like somebody in 600s, but like 200-300, because if you go back 30-40 years ago, it was more normal to have a cholesterol that was in the 200s, and now they want you so low, but our body needs it.
Well, they changed the numbers on many things over time, blaming it on the pharmaceutical companies in my mind, because if 300 was an acceptable number in the past and we move it to 100, then we get to sell you drugs to knock it down. And that's where we are.
Yeah. I mean, pharmaceuticals are driving a lot of this. And I think I just want to kind of go back to being like a sugar versus a fat burner.
Right.
So, for example, if you eat lots of carbs, you're basically what that happens is your muscles store glycogen, which is produced, you'll have all this insulin come in. And insulin is the fat storage hormone. That's basically, you need insulin in your body to store fat. So, for example, if you are a type 1 diabetic, not a type 2, but a type 1, your body does not produce insulin. These people are waif thin and they're in trouble of wasting away. So they need to shoot themselves with insulin so they can actually absorb calories. Because without insulin, it doesn't happen. So the thing that raises insulin in the body is carbs, not fat. So if you eat a 100% fat diet, your insulin is going to be negligible. You eat, all these carbs, it's going to be through the roof. And usually when people get type 2 diabetes, which is the exact opposite, it means your body's constantly throwing out so much insulin because you're having so many carbs all the time that your body becomes insulin resistant, and then it needs more and more insulin, and then your blood sugar is crazy. Yeah.
It's a vicious cycle.
Right.
That
And
doesn't go well.
that's the type 2, and that's what I'm fighting.
Yeah.
Is I'm actually I'm reversing my insulin resistance by eating the more fats.
Correct.
And so that I mean, you put glucose into your body, sugars through whatever, it doesn't have to work hard to switch that sugar to sugar for it to use. It just does. It might not be the right sugars, but it's doing it anyway. And like you said, insulin just goes sky high constantly. And after a while, your cells just get resistant to it.
Yeah.
Which is where I was.
Well, some other factors too, like if you're eating a lot of sugars, some things that would signify that you're not as metabolically flexible as you should is, do you get hangry? If you miss a meal, are you like irritable and tough to be around? Is your first meal of the day all carbs? Do you have trouble losing weight? These are all things that signify you're a sugar burner, and if you're a sugar burner, then you're not burning your fat. So if you eat too many carbs, it's just going to get stored at fat, and you're never going to tap those reserves ever.
Right. And that's where I was.
Yeah.
And now it's changed. I mean, even though people call me disingenuous.
Not to your face.
No, it's keyboard warriors that do it. Because if you look at me and you've known me before and you know me now, my weight has drastically changed, and it's even noticed. I even notice it, and most people, it happens so fast that I noticed it. Because usually you don't notice yourself getting bigger, or you notice yourself getting smaller. You notice the number on the scale, but you don't actually see it in yourself very well because you see yourself all the time, and it's over time. But for me, literally, when I started what was going to be a 72-hour fast, but I changed it to a 70 because when it would end at night, I lost, what was it, 25 pounds. 70 hours. People can't believe that. But that's because I stopped the whole train wreck that I was on.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. and it's
and
so
some of
healthy.
that is water weight, you know.
Oh yeah,
which,
most of it was water weight.
but a lot of that is fat too. Like when you stop feeding your body carbs, your body has no other alternative than to start burning fats. And they could be dietary fats, or they could be, you know, excess fats on your body.
Right.
So obviously if you're in a, you know, if you're not eating and you're in a, you know, fast per se, of course it's going to go after the fats of your body.
Yeah, and interestingly, you know, you mentioned the majority of it was water weight. And what I knew, but it didn't click in my head, when my sugar level was going sky high, I felt nothing. But I started having an unquenchable thirst. And Mike, you said I was drinking like 2 gallons a day, maybe?
Yeah, you're using typically what 6 to 8 bottles of water. So it
Yeah.
comes out to about 2 gallons a day you were going.
Yeah. And so that was the water weight that I was dumping when I stopped. And now I have to force myself to drink. I have no thirst. In fact, I have no hunger. I have to force myself to drink water during the day. And I wouldn't say I have to force myself to eat. I just do it by a timing.
Yeah.
But I'm not.
Well, fats are more satiable.
Yeah,
Satiable.
so I'm not
Satiating.
satiating,
Yeah.
but I'm not
They feel
hungry.
you better.
Yeah. Well, I'm not hungry.
You know, it's like
I never get hungry now.
going back to the calorie thing. You know, they're not created equal. They're not equal. The different, you know, carb calories, fat calories, protein calories, like they all do something different and have a different need in our body. And the whole calorie in, calorie out it's almost a myth now with all the science we have.
Yeah.
You know,
All the calorie counters.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, if you put your body in a deficit, you're going to lose weight, but are you losing weight the proper way? And are you losing it for the right reasons? And, you know, are you still being healthy? Like, I mean, I've read stories where people are down 500 calories a day. That's not healthy.
Right.
You know, that's not the way to do it.
No.
I can relate to that because I know when I first got diagnosed with type 2, the doctor put me on a 1,500 calorie a day diet. But that's all he did. 1,500 calories.
Not what type.
Not
not
what types of food. So
Yeah.
I was on 15 and I wasn't seeing any change. That's because I was still eating the types of food
Yeah.
that I was eating before. I was just eating less.
Because the body's very efficient. Like if you reduce your calories, your body will just it'll down regulate itself to operate on less calories. You know, you're not really you know, there might be an initial weight loss, but
Eventually you become stagnant.
you become stagnant. And then when you finally are like so hungry that you're like, oh my God, I got to eat. Now that's going to all be fat.
And you gain
Right.
fat faster usually after that. That's why a lot of times you see somebody who's lost a lot of weight and then a year or two later they're back to where they were or
And
more.
then some.
Yeah, because
Right.
it's not sustainable what doing that. You have to change the lifestyle and find the things that you can do forever.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And once somebody like starts eating more fats and recognizing that it tastes better, I mean,
Yeah, of
butter
course.
tastes better in margarine. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
You
Uh-huh.
know, so once you start to learn this, it's sustainable. The eating it that way is sustainable, and eating whole foods is much better than, you know, having all the other crap and the sugars and the low fats. The low fats are horrible in the fat freeze because it strips everything from it that our body needs, the minerals, the vitamins, you know, the different things are all stripped out of there and replaced with artificial or sweet or sugar. It's
Right.
you know,
Well, interestingly, you know, I knew for a couple of years, maybe more than a couple of years, that I was pre-diabetic. And I should have paid attention to it, but I didn't feel anything then either, you know? And so, you know, if you don't feel bad, if you're not hurting for some reason, you ignore it because you don't feel bad.
Well, I
And-
think a lot of people, sorry to cut you off,
No,
but
that's okay.
I think a lot of people attribute it, oh, I'm getting older. It's,
Yeah, that's
I'm
true.
achy, I'm tired. Well, you know, I'm X amount of years now. And they just attributed that to a normal sign of aging rather than realizing like, no, it's your diet,
It's the
you know?
diet, yeah.
that's I preach that.
Yeah.
Like, I want to say, scream it from, you know, I want everybody to understand, like, you can get rid of these aches and pains. You can feel better. You can, you know, you can have some pep in your step if you, you know, change what you're putting into your body, because it's,
Right, real
it's all
energy.
fuel. And when you're fueling it with bad things, it's reacting the same way. It's not happy about it. You know?
Well, going back to what you said a few minutes ago about you know, going on a low calorie diet and then going off it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I found out I was pre-diabetic, didn't really do anything about it. In fact, I did Zippo about it, if we're going to be honest. But I went and saw a doctor probably 4 months before my blood sugar went sky high. And I was higher, not dangerously high sugar, but higher. And he wanted to put me on insulin. Never mentioned diet. Wanted to put me on insulin. I said, no, I'm not doing insulin. I'm not becoming insulin dependent. And he said, well, then let's use Ozempic. Now, not knowing much better, I said, okay. And so I used the Ozempic. I really didn't feel any side effects from it, but I did lose some weight. And then the free samples ran out. And Ozempic's $1,000 a month if you don't have
Wow.
insurance.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so fortunately for me that I didn't have the $1,000 a month to blow on Ozempic, so I stopped. I attribute to stopping that to my blood sugar ramping sky high. I can't prove it, but I stopped it when my blood sugar wasn't that bad. Wasn't great. I was in the probably 160, 180 range. But when I stopped it, and roughly a month later is when I did the blood test 2 weeks ago at 403. So, and I gained back all the weight that I had lost in just a few weeks. So, yes, if you do these fad things, and I consider Ozempic right now to be a fad,
Oh, definitely.
and a
but,
dangerous one.
you know, not to promote the medical system, but there are places for specific things. Our system is really good for acute, and you know, when you need something. And if you're a very obese person, I could see the benefit of having a shot like that. But the problem is it's not sustainable forever, and they also need guidance on nutrition and exercise, because shots like that target your muscle mass first. So
Yes.
you're not losing your fat, you're wasting away. I don't know if you've ever seen anybody that's lost a whole bunch of weight on it. They've wasted away. They don't look healthy, you know. So it's more than just, you know, getting the shot. I think there's a place for it, but not forever. And I also think it needs to go side by side with nutrition, how to change your diet, how to change your lifestyle, and you need to continue to work out. You need to lift weights in order to stop that loss of muscle mass.
Well, that's the education part that everybody need. I need, and that's where we're working to here is trying to educate people. And this whole fat thing, it really starts there.
Yeah. There's a study that this guy did, which I thought was really interesting. So it was a study of one. I mean, it was interesting, but for 21 days, he decided to eat roughly just under 58,000 calories. So he did for
58,000.
He wanted to see
In a day?
Okay. I'm not even. So he
That's
wanted to
massive.
see. It's a massive amount of calories. So this is just kind of proves the quality versus calories in, calories out. So he did a couple experiments. So first he did a high carb, you know, low fat diet, which is the typical, you know, what they were promoting all along. So basically the way if you do the calories in, calories out, there should be a mathematical thing like to lose a pound of fat, they could consider that 3,500 calories. So you would think if I'm eating this many with this much surplus, it should be so many pounds at the end of, you know, these 21 days. Well, it turned out on the high carb, low fat, he went way beyond that. I wrote down these things. He actually gained 15.6 pounds, which is way more than he should have just for going, you know, I mean, it's well above his caloric needs, but it wasn't, you know, quadruple his caloric needs. So around his waist, he gained 3.6 inches.
Wow.
And he, you know, he visibly looked bad. I mean, he wasn't looking that good. So then he did 21 days where he did a high fat, low carb diet. And on that one, again, you would think you'd gain maybe 5 to 6, but instead he only gained 2.9 pounds. That's it, eating that many calories. And he actually lost 1.2 inches around his waist because the 2.9 pounds was muscle, not fat. So what he gained was actually muscle. So when people think, oh, I want to lose weight, you don't want to lose weight. You want to lose fat. Because what a lot of people do when they cut their calories or do all sorts of things or do it unhealthy, you actually are losing muscle weight. So for example, you could be, I don't know, 150 pounds at 5'5", and if you have 10% body fat versus 20% body fat, same weight, same height, you're going to look drastically different. You know, your weight's the same, your height's the same. So what you really want is a higher amount of, because muscle is more dense than fat. So a pound of muscle is smaller, where a pound of fat is larger. So you just look like soft and fluffy if that weight is all fat. And then with muscle, not only do you look better, but this is the strength. So as you get older, it's easier to get up from a chair or open something. You know, you need muscle strength in so many bodily functions, because it's one thing to live 90, but if you're stuck bedridden, what good is it?
Right,
It's not good at all.
exactly.
You know, so it's the quality of life. And the more muscle you have, the better quality of life you're going to have.
So, what books or what method do you think people should use to begin their journey?
I don't know. I think the biggest thing is just, for me, because I think a lot of people have difficulty removing stuff. You know, like that's people's biggest thing.
They're addicted.
They're addicted, and honestly, like sugar is 3 times more addictive than cocaine.
Yeah.
Really?
They have done studies on this.
Yeah, and
It's
it lights
three.
up the same.
It's 3 times where given the option of a person hooked on cocaine and sugar will opt for the sugar over the cocaine.
Even the rats do.
Yeah, the rats, like 3 times more. So that's how addictive it is. So it's very hard for some people to go, okay, just give up all sugars. First, what I would do is focus on the quality of foods. Get rid of all processed and just start with whole foods. You know, Twinkies aren't whole foods. But if you have a sugar craving, eat a banana. You know, eat
Eat an
something,
apple, yeah.
at
Eat
least
something
eat
that's-
something that are natural carbs of, you know, fructose and stuff versus something, you know, think, is it made on a farm or is it made in a factory? You know, that's a
Farm
good
versus
start.
factory, sure.
But I think the biggest thing is if you at least try to eat, for so many people, they're not getting as much protein as they need. So if you try to, let's just say, aim for 1 gram of, you know, per lean body mass. So if you're 200 pounds, but you think you should be 100 pounds, then target at least 100 grams of protein a day. So don't focus on eliminating, but adding. If you add those 100 grams of protein and make sure you're actually eating that, it's satiating, and you're more likely to not feel the need for a Twinkie or this or
and
that.
The
you
funny
know,
part is like when you're eating more of the whole foods and adding the more protein and fiber. Fiber's important too. because
I
people don't
disagree,
get
but
well, people don't get enough anymore. Out of
I'm 100% carnivore. I don't need fiber.
okay.
you
But-
know,
but-
and people
But I'm
thrive on
talking
carnivore.
about people like that are eating processed foods. I'm talking about the person eating the wrong kind of diet. They're not.
Well,
there's-
I think whole foods versus, you know,
Yeah,
processed, but I personally wouldn't focus on a fiber number, because all that is fiber is something that's undigestible by the body, so you poop out more. It's not needed.
like
If you don't eat junk, you don't need to clean out junk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but my point is the person eating junk is not getting enough of anything. They're not getting enough vitamins, minerals, fiber, protein. They're not getting enough of anything. And so the funny thing that happens is when you change to a whole food diet and cutting out the processed foods, cutting out the sugars, cutting out all the junk, you will eat more calories and you will lose weight, which is the complete opposite of what we've been told.
Yeah.
You know, that was my point, what I was trying to
Yeah,
get to.
yeah.
Yeah.
But if you eat healthy foods, I wouldn't focus on, like, you know, get enough protein and go towards healthy foods. You know, I would opt more, if you're hungry, go for more of a high fat than a high carb. You know, even like I gave Alan a little tidbit when he was fasting. I said, if you ever get like so hungry that you don't feel like you can, I go, bite on a stick of butter. And he
Yeah.
thought I was nuts, but it works.
Well,
Like
I still do, but but I did it,
Yeah,
and it worked.
works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it works.
Where if you ended up having, let's say, something high carb, like a banana, even though it's healthy, you're going to be hungry in like an hour or so. Like if you keep feeding yourself carbs, you get this spike of highs and lows of energy throughout the day, where lower carb, you're more even keeled. As Anita said, your brain works on fats and stuff like that. You're going to have more mental acuity, like stuff like that. The higher fat you are, you're just going to run better, honestly.
And a lot of people that I've spoken to about this, and we have a lot of people following us already, believe it or not. They're all worried about the cholesterol levels and clogging arteries and stuff from increasing fats because they still have the whacked out mindset.
Now me, like I'm primarily carnivore. Like occasionally I'll have different stuff, but I'll eat red meats, eggs, whatever. My blood pressure is like usually like 86/40. Every time I go to a doctor, they think their equipment is malfunctioning. And I'll even tell them it's, I'm just super healthy. And well, no one's this healthy.
Yeah.
And then after they realize, oh, we'll use the manual versus electronic and it all comes out the same. Then they're like, are you a professional athlete? That's the next question.
Really?
Yeah.
I always get like, because my age, like you're not on any medication, no medication no medication. I take no medication. It's like, it's so hard for them to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like even my dad, he recently passed at 96 and they're like, oh, would he die of? He was 96. Like he died of old age. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
And no matter what we do, things wear out.
Yeah, and he was ready to go. And I think if he was mentally more in the game, he probably still would have went another 10 years. But he kind of just all of his friends, like it was just
Right.
a lot of stuff that he checked out probably about 2 years ago. So
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard for the doctors when you go in there.
yeah, and they would say the
you.
same thing, like what is he on? I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know, nothing. Like
Because I had the thumb surgery and I got asked like multiple times by multiple people about medication. I don't take it. Can you please put that on the file? No medication.
Well, even the other thing, like I did, I don't know, I had dental surgery and then they prescribed you an antibiotic. And I said, no, I'm not going to fill that. And I'm like, or I'll fill it and keep it, but I'm not going to take it. They're like, well, what if you get an infection? I go, well, then I'll take it. I'm not going to obliterate my whole gut flora over an infection that I don't
Possibly.
even have.
Yeah.
Like
that you make it.
Yeah. I mean, if I get the infection, then I'll deal with it. But it's so many people are so quick to just take pills. And like your gut microbiome, I kind of equivalent to like a rainforest where, the more you feed it, it'll grow and be beautiful. And then if you do a whole round of antibiotics, it's like a forest fire. So once you're done,
all the good and the bad. It kills
everything.
And doctors never tell you if you have to take it. They never tell you to go take a probiotic with it. And when I say a probiotic, it's got to be a strong probiotic that's got like 50 billion, 100 billion in it, and it should be quite expensive, about $100, because you also want one that's going to make it past the acid in the stomach and get all the way in there to replenish all that stuff that got killed.
Yeah. So I mean, but I think the key thing is just, focus on, if you're hungry, steer towards more a healthy, natural fat and not these seed oils,
Bacon.
Yeah.
Bacon,
Bacon.
I mean, to me, like,
That's
bacon
one
is
of the things
awesome.
that kept me on the diet. That bacon was one of the number one items, so that was good.
We go through a lot of bacon in my house.
Yeah. They,
uncured bacon, though.
Yeah. No maple cured
No
bacon.
nitrates,
even though that's the
no
greatest
nit-
tasting
Well,
stuff.
I always look for two ones. You'd be surprised how much bacon adds sugar. They keep
Yes.
adding sugar to all meat.
Yes.
Like, let us add our own ingredients,
If
but
we need it, yeah.
but I get usually a low sodium, low sugar one, and then rather than add their iodized salt, I'll add my own concoction of electrolytes. So, but just stick to and also I just want to say, if you're going to do like more meats, like your ruminant animals are much healthier. like your cows and lambs are healthier than pork and stuff.
Yeah.
Like even though you can eat bacon, there's nothing wrong with it. But just know that like a grass-fed beef is going to be
Yeah, I
more
was
Right.
gonna say that.
nutrient dense than a pig.
And wild
basically.
caught fish.
But you want to
Yeah.
make sure like it's grass fed because you consume what that cow ate. So if that cow is eating something that it wasn't meant to eat, which is a bunch of grains and stuff, it's not as good for you as
And
if you had that
antibiotics and the
grass-fed.
hormones
Yeah,
that they
as
pump
if
it
you
up
had
with.
the grass
Yeah.
fed, grass finished being the best.
Yeah, or they do this on eggs all the time. They're like fed a vegetarian diet.
Yeah.
Well, chicken aren't vegetarians.
No, they eat
You know,
bugs.
like people aren't vegetarians either. So if you look
Yeah.
at most vegetarians or vegans, they're usually sickly. And I know I'm going to get all these people mad at me, but most people who go of the vegetarian diet usually means they're usually having all sorts of problems. I mean, some people have problems with the animals, but usually they're having all sorts of problems, and then they dwindle their diet down to let me go vegetarian, then they'll still feel like crap, and then let me
Yeah.
go vegan, or vegan, however you want to say it. But and then finally, when that doesn't work, then they might start carnivore. Like usually, carnivore is like the last resort.
Because you're getting
and
the
it's one of-
vitamins and minerals out of the carnivore. When you go to that vegan or vegetarian, you're not getting enough of the of what you need in vitamins and minerals, and most of them end up being deficient. There are one in like few that actually do it correctly if
Yeah.
they choose to do it and stay healthy, because they know they have to supplement with specific things. Plus, unfortunately, there's a lot of processed foods out there now for vegetarian and vegan, so they're not even eating real vegetables anymore.
Yeah.
They're eating the processed stuff. So
Well, even when they are consuming massive amounts of vegetables and stuff, they're also eating all the herbicides and all the crap that goes
Especially
on
if
that.
you're not
So
going
so
organic.
it's not a healthy.
No, I remember I had a neighbor who was she was vegan and pregnant and having all sorts of problems throughout the pregnancy, like one
Yeah.
thing after another, and finally the doctor said, just eat meat. If you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for your baby. And everything went away.
Uh,
So I mean, it's one of those, like I said, I just vegetarian is better than the standard American diet, which is like a bunch of
I think
processed
everything's
crap.
better than that.
Yeah, but I think the thing is, if you're going to start, do baby steps. If you're on all processed foods, which means it comes in a box,
Yeah.
it's made in a factory. It has a whole ingredient label, and they're selling you how it's fortified. If it needs a health claim on it, it's probably not that healthy. If
Because
you're
they have such leeway with what they put on there.
Oh yeah,
You
and
know,
and it's
there's-
fortified. It means that all the vitamins and minerals have been
been
stripped
stripped,
out of
and
it,
they had to add it
and
back.
now they have to add something to give it some sort of
Yeah.
nutritional value on the back.
There's a great salt, sugar, and fat, and it goes into the whole about the marketing of these things,
Oh, yeah.
and it goes into those details how when you have that on the cover, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy, and so it's
so you mean Fruit Loops aren't made out of fruit?
No.
no.
Well, even like one of my businesses is I own a design agency, so a lot of my customers were those big food companies out there. So I used to do nutrition labels and packaging, and trust me, like been there, done that. I talk from experience. Yeah. And just so you know, like on the food label, another trick they do is when you're looking at ingredients, they have to be listed in order of, if the highest ingredient is sugar,
gotta be
it's going to be first. But how they get away with it, they'll do sugar, high fructose corn syrup,
Right.
then
There's 1,000 names for it.
there's 1,000 names, so they'll break it up into 10 ingredients. So then maybe the first two will be wheat and something
Yeah.
else, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't have more sugar than anything else. It's just broken up into different
Very
components of sugar.
deceptive. They're
Yeah.
very deceptive.
Well, there was a product that I was consuming rather frequently that, and I used Chat GPT AI to help me along with this. I took a picture of the ingredients label and said, "Can I eat this?" And in capital letters, the response was no.
I love it.
And it gave a whole list of
Why. Yeah.
And it was very interesting because the label said sugar-free. But the ingredients said, 400 different names for sugar. So it was loaded with sugar just by a different name.
Yeah. Or they'll say sugar free and means it's aspartame or,
Yeah.
Yeah, they was loaded with that
sucralose,
too.
something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But they actually had a study where they just gave people whole foods versus unprocessed foods, and they could eat, whatever, like they weren't restricting calories, whatever. And they found that just eating processed foods, people ate 500 calories more on average. Because what most people don't know is in the food industry, when they're creating something processed, they have this, they call it like that sweet point, or that
Yes,
they
bliss
it's
point.
it the bliss point where it's the right amount of salt, sugar, and fat
That's
that you'll never get full.
Yeah, they do samples on people. Like they bring people in to taste these new products or are changing a product to find that bliss point. And that book, Salt, Sugar, and Fat, talks about that.
Yeah.
Like how the bliss point, and like they market it to us in a way and create it in a way that we get addicted to it.
Yeah.
Basically.
Well, that's why you can't sit down and eat just one potato chip.
Yeah. Well, that was like, I said in a different podcast, but, if you sat down and you made 4 baked potatoes, how many people are going to be able to eat that? Like nobody.
Right.
But in a blink of an eye, someone could go through a bag of potato chips, and it's not like they're even full after that.
Yeah.
And not only that, it's not just potato, but it has all this added fat, all this added salt. So you're actually getting even more calories than the 4 potatoes.
Right.
And it's got
And you're hungry at the end of it.
fat oils in it, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
all the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I
Because
used to be I could sit down and destroy a bag of
Yeah.
potato chips.
But you got
I
to look.
use a lot of times. I use the example on what the food companies are doing today to cause the addictions and why they're doing certain things. Probably about 10 years ago, when cigarettes were on the downside, okay, and I can't remember whether it was Phillips or one of the other cigarette companies bought Kraft food. Okay, and they know how to make addiction.
Yeah.
Okay,
they took those tactics from the cigarettes and put it to the food.
they did.
Yeah.
It's in there. We don't understand what it's called,
Yeah.
but it's on the label somewhere. If you could really define everything on there, I mean, most of us can't pronounce most of it.
That's why I
can't.
take pictures and send
You
it
know,
to Jack, because
yeah.
I can't pronounce it.
But they're putting stuff in there, just like you're saying. They did the test of what's going to keep you coming back for it.
Yeah.
I mean, Kraft macaroni and cheese. Oh, wow, I used to live on that.
Yeah, but the sad part is other
but-
countries for Kraft macaroni and cheese get a different recipe than we get.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
Because the
So
United
our
States.
government is
Yeah.
involved as much as the independent companies are involved. They're not. The word natural flavors.
It just
It's
means yeah.
It's,
It
there's
means it
I
tastes
forgot
like
what
something
it's
natural.
called. There's something that they do with they have this leeway where if it's been sort of studied but not really like sort of proven to be okay, they fall into this like gray area, and there's a name for it, and it's eluding me right now. I don't remember what it's called, but they're allowed to.
Deception.
They're allowed to put it on the like use the ingredient, even though it's never really been tested over a long term or anything like that.
But-
It's just
Well, I tell people,
but
I say,
just-
when it says natural ingredients, know this.
No natural
Dog
flavor.
poop is as a
Yeah.
natural
Well,
ingredient.
they have this thing like for natural flavors, like the strawberry and ice cream and yogurt is actually made from the beaver anus.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding.
No,
there's
she's
an
not. She's
there's
not
an
sure.
actual ingredient. It's like
it's
cholesterol.
they
or- I
squeeze
for-
the
Yeah.
anal glands or
But
something.
that's a natural flavor.
yeah.
So again,
Yum.
just
We're gotta
eliminate.
be coming so close here. I'm
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah, but just eliminating processed foods is going to be, I think, step 1 in the journey
Yeah.
for most people, and stop demonizing fat. Like fat is your friend. If
Healthy
you
fats.
healthy fats,
Healthy
it's your
fats,
friends. Yeah. Because if your body's burning fats instead of carbs, and for that you usually have to have less than 20 carbs a day to be ketogenic, which is where you're burning fats instead of carbs, then you're more likely to be able to tap into your fat stores even without fasting.
Well,
Right.
and going ketogenic and in carnivore things like that, you become more metabolically fit, which is the key, because metabolic disease, which is talking about your sugars and insulins and things like that, it's more of a precursor to a lot of the problems we have now with people having different chronic diseases. Is they're metabolically unfit. They can't you could probably eat a cookie and process it pretty well and pretty fast, and it's really not going to affect you. But you right now, if you were to eat that cookie, it's going to skyrocket.
Oh,
you
I'd be
because
out.
you're not
right back
metabolically healthy.
Right.
So, you know, it's all about getting to where you're metabolically fit, and you can, you know, cheat a little bit here, you know, enjoy life a little bit. It's just getting that lifestyle change and understanding it. And like you said, cutting out the bad and eating the whole foods and trying to adjust it. And you'll find, as long as you stick to it and give it a chance, you will not like the other stuff after a certain time.
The real food tastes better.
Yes.
Just tastes better.
Yes. Sugar won't taste the same to you.
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to just say too is abstinence is kind of like a muscle. You know what I mean? So if you're trying to be really good, like no one wakes up and goes, today I'm just going to trash my diet. Everyone wakes up going, I'm going to eat really good today. And then, you know, whatever. Then they go to work and there's donuts and you know what I mean?
Or maybe their wife brings home cheesecake.
Cake. Well,
You can make
who can you be talking about?
Are you trying to send a message?
No.
No, but there's
Okay.
actually a health. Like I make cheesecake and it's healthy.
Yeah.
Like I made a dessert, a completely carnivore dessert. That's amazing. But the point I'm making is, when you're trying to be good, don't have your kitchen with all the stuff out on the counter that's going to be tempting you all day. If you go to work and there's you can ask them to put it away or something, and just let people know that you're trying to be good. Or to sit there and go, oh, I could say no. Like I said, nobody starts out any day going,
No.
I'm going to trash my diet. Yet at the end of every day, people go, tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow. And
no.
it's a real thing.
It is. But know that it's okay. It's okay to like fall off that wagon. Just get up the next day and try again, because you will get to the point, if you keep trying, where you'll see that donut and you'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine eating that again. I can't believe I used to eat that.
Well, it's interesting because, and it's still, I'm a short timer. I'm a baby keto.
That's so cute.
I feel myself, I never smoked, but I feel myself becoming like an ex-smoker, where ex-smokers are like just they go out of their mind if they get around cigarette smoke, not craving it, but getting upset and
Like
pushing it away.
Yeah.
And I feel like with a piece of, a circle thing of cheesecake that came home the other day by somebody.
Talk about the thumps. Yeah,
I look at it and I think, I'd have eaten that at one point and it would have destroyed me.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, it still even hasn't been opened or eaten, so it's still sitting there taunting me. But I almost am repulsed by it.
But
Not that I am, but that's the feeling.
no, but I found that too, like even people, you go to parties and they tempt you because they eat bad. So there's
They think,
always people that they're trying to take you off your journey, and
Right.
they're not doing it maliciously. I think it's
No.
they feel bad themselves and they just
Yeah.
want company in that, I don't know what it is.
Everybody likes company.
Yeah. But they'll like, oh, well, look at this donut. And,
Yeah.
and I'm
Krispy
like,
Kreme.
yeah. And if you're not into that, like I don't have cravings
Yeah, I
for
don't
that,
either. It doesn't like. And when we went on a cruise recently, and I got off that ship and was like, I felt horrible because it wasn't my normal diet. I was obviously like, oh, I'm gonna have dessert. I'm on vacation. I'm on. Once you get used to eating this natural way, this whole foods way, like you eat that other stuff and you feel it immediately. Like those aches, those pains, the fogginess, it all comes back. And it comes back faster than ever.
Yeah.
So you feel it immediately.
Yeah.
I'm not. If I start to drop off the wagon, smack me in the head. Yeah, thanks. Well,
We're gonna hold each other's.
we got two things left to do. First, we have to decide on next week's topic. What do you think we should do?
Ooh, interesting. I don't know. I mean, should we? What do you in your journey? Once you got over the fat being not the enemy, what was the next thing you? Fruits. Okay, let's discuss produce.
Yeah,
Definitely.
That was the next
Fruits
thing.
and
'cause-
vegetables. Let's go through all that.
Yeah, I think.
like
Okay,
that.
so next week we'll be talking about fruits and vegetables.
Woohoo!
Yeah, and it's important because you mentioned a banana earlier. but I can't eat a banana.
No, I know a lot of people. A lot of people think it's good. Like, oh, it's potassium. So does avocado, and avocado has more than banana. Eat an avocado.
Yeah, even though it has some fat in it, you can eat it.
He was marketing that banana ahead of the avocado.
Yeah, yeah.
Then the second thing, Mike brought in a little treat today that I'm going to try. Some of you can also try it if you want. Mike, go ahead and talk about what you've got.
Well, going on this diet, I had to find replacements. That's what I thought for the things I liked. Pasta, I was a pastaholic. So I found, and finally my mental said, it's not the pasta, it's what you put on it that you miss the most. The sauce, the meats and stuff like that. So I've gotten non-pasta pasta. And, growing up as a New Yorker, pizza was a main part of our diet.
Wait. It wasn't an impasta.
Boom.
So as I say, growing up in New York, it was a major part of my diet, and I loved it. And at one point in time, I even had a pizzeria. We made our own. And giving that up was really hard. So I started researching, how can I replace it? So what I made for people today, if they want to try it or not, it's not hot out of the oven, but I make pizza with no dough, no bread at all. The foundation on this one here is 1 pound of grass-fed ground beef. Okay? That I mix with, this particular mix had 2 eggs in it. And then it had some seasoning, some Italian seasoning and stuff in it mixed in. Give a good mix to it. I use an iron pan, flatten it out, looking like a little bit of a pizza. Not as great because you can't flip it.
I'd love to see that with the ground beef.
Meat flying everywhere.
And I use a low carb, low sugar marinara sauce. I put the little sauce on it to start it. Then it goes in the oven at 450 degrees for about 10 minutes. Then I remove it, comes out, put a little bit more sauce on. Then I put a combination of mozzarella and cheddar. I learned when I was in the pizza business, mozzarella is what spreads the cheese. It has not the flavor. The cheddar had the flavor, so we always mixed our own cheese mix. Put that on. And then I put some slices of sliced pork rinds, not pork rinds, but that was the other thing. In the mix was powdered pork rinds.
In the
panko. Before I mixed it all up,
okay.
that was part of it. That helps hold it together.
Yeah, I use that.
And then it goes back in the oven for another 10 minutes. Then it all melts down, goes up, then cool it down. And of course, it was last night, so it's last night. It did spend the night in the refrigerator.
It's always better the next day.
Yeah.
That's
So
all right.
if anybody would like it, that's what it is. I've made the same thing with ground chicken, with ground pork, and ground beef. Just make it taste a little different.
I've done it with ground chicken.
Yeah.
Well,
And so
I'm willing to try a slice.
Yeah, let's dig in.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we- hold the piece up to the
I'm gonna
camera.
go get some paper towels.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, here. I'll
be
hold
right
it
back,
up.
guys.
This is our
Whoop.
sampling.
There we go. And it looks like pizza.
It looks like pizza.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed it was ground beef, but now it looks like it.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, we're gonna end this show and we're gonna eat and
Yeah.
we're gonna enjoy.
We'll report
That
back.
smells good.
It
Yeah,
does?
we'll
Yeah,
report
yeah.
back. So tune in next week for fruits and vegetables.
Fruits and veggies. See you then.
See you later.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for tuning in.